A reading from the book of 1 Kings. Today is October 21st. Our reading from 1 Kings is chapter 7. And it took Solomon 13 years to build his palace until his whole palace was completed. He built the Lebanon forest house with 4 rows of cedar columns and with hewn cedar beams above the columns. Its length was 100 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. It was paneled above with cedar with the planks that were above on the 45 columns, 15 in each row. And there were 3 rows of windows frames with 3 tiers of windows facing each other. All the doorways and doorposts had square frames with 3 tiers of windows facing each other. He made the portico of columns 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide. The portico was in front of the columns, and there were columns with a canopy in front of them. He made the throne portico where he was to pronounce judgment, the hall of judgment. It was paneled with cedar from floor to floor. The house that he used as a residence in the rear courtyard back of the portico was of the same construction. Solomon also constructed a palace like that portico for the daughter of Pharaoh, whom he had married. All these buildings from foundation to coping and all the ways out to the great courtyard were of choice stones, hewn according to measure, smooth on all sides. The foundations were huge blocks of choice stones, stones of 10 cubits and stones of 8 cubits. And above were choice stones hewn according to measure and cedar wood. The large surrounding courtyard had 3 tiers of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams, the same as for the inner court of the house of the Lord and for the portico of the house. King Solomon sent for Hiram and brought him down from Tyre. He was the son of a widow of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father had been a Tyrian, a coppersmith. He was endowed with skills, ability, and talent for executing all work in bronze. He came to King Solomon and executed all his work. He cast 2 columns of bronze. 1 column was 18 cubits high and measured 12 cubits in circumference, and similarly the other column. He made 2 capitals cast in bronze to be set upon the 2 columns, the height of each of the 2 capitals being 5 cubits. Also nets of meshwork with festoons of chainwork for the capitals that were on top of the columns, 7 for each of the 2 capitals. He made the columns so that there were 2 rows of pomegranates encircling the top of the one of network to cover the capitals that were on the top of the pomegranates. And he did the same for the network on the second capital. The capitals upon the column of the portico were of lily design, 4 cubits high. So also the capitals upon the 2 columns extended above the next to the bulge that was beside the network. There were 200 pomegranates in rows around the top of the second capital. He set up the columns at the portico of the great hall. He set up 1 column on the right, named it Jachin, and he set up the other column on the left and named it Boaz. Upon the top of the columns there was a lily design. Thus the work of the columns was complete. Then he made the tank of cast metal, 10 cubits across from brim to brim, completely round. It was 5 cubits high, and it measured 30 cubits in circumference. There were gourds below the brim completely encircling it, 10 to a cubit encircling the tank. The gourds were in 2 rows cast in one piece with it. It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east, with the tank resting upon them. Their haunches were all turned inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was made like that of a cup, like the petals of a lily. Its capacity was 2,000 baths. He made the 10 laver stands of bronze. The length of each laver stand was 4 cubits, and the width 4 cubits, and the height was 3 cubits. The structure of the laver stands was as follows. They had insets, and there were insets within the frames, and on the insets within the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. Above the frames was a stand, and both above and below the lions and the oxen were spirals of hammered metal. Each layer stand had 4 bronze wheels and 2 bronze axle trees. Its 4 legs had brackets. The brackets were under the laver, cast with spirals beyond each. Its funnel with a crown rose a cubit above it. This funnel was round, in the fashion of a stand. a cubit and a half in diameter. On the funnel, too, there were carvings. But the insets were square, not round, and below the insets were the 4 wheels. The axletrees of the wheels were fixed in the laver stand, and the height of each wheel was a cubit and a half. The structure of the wheels was like the structure of chariot wheels, and their axletrees, their rims, their spokes, and their hubs were all of cast metal. 4 brackets ran to the 4 corners of each laver stand. The brackets were of a piece with the laver stand. At the top of the laver stand was a round band half a cubit high, and together with the top of the laver stand, its sides and its insets were of one piece with it. On its surface, on its sides, and on its insets, Hiram engraved cherubim, lions, and palms, as the clear space on each allowed, with spirals round about. It was after this manner that he made the 10 laver stands, all of them cast alike, of the same measure and the same form. Then he made 10 bronze lavers, 1 laver on each of the 10 laver stands, each laver measuring 4 cubits, and each laver containing 40 baths. He disposed the laver stands, 5 at the right side of the house and 5 at its left side, and the tank he placed on the right side of the house at the southeast corner. Hiram also made the lavers, the scrapers, and the sprinkling bowls. So Hiram finished all the work that he had been doing for King Solomon on the house of the Lord, the 2 columns, the 2 globes of the capitals upon the columns, and the 2 pieces of network to cover the 2 globes of the capitals upon the columns, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 pieces of network, the 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 globes of the capitals upon the columns, the 10 stands and the 10 lavers upon the stands, the 1 tank with the 12 oxen underneath the tank, the pails, the scrapers, and the sprinkling bowls. All those vessels in the house of the Lord that Hiram made for King Solomon were of burnished bronze. The king had them cast in earthen molds in the plain of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all the vessels unweighed because of their very great quantity. The weight of the bronze was not reckoned. And Solomon made all the furnishings that were in the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, the table for the bread of display of gold, the lampstands, 5 on the right and 5 on the left, in front of the shrine of solid gold, and the petals, lamps, and tongues of gold, the basins, snuffers, sprinkling bowls, ladles, and fire pans of solid gold, and the hinged sockets for the doors of the innermost part of the house, the Holy of Holies, and for the doors of the great hall of the house of gold. When all the work that King Solomon had done in the house of the Lord was completed, Solomon brought in the sacred donations of his father David, the silver, the gold, and the vessels, and deposited them in the treasury of the house of the Lord.